So good morning, everybody. This is Remco Munich from Asphalion. Welcome to our webinar today. I'm delighted to have this webinar about simplifying the management of complex SPOR data. We do this together with Core IT, which will give you a short introduction. I will wait a couple of minutes more for the people that are joining. So in 2 minutes, we start the webinar. Thank you. Okay, I see that in the meantime, the majority of the participants have joined. So good morning again. My name is Remco. I have the pleasure to do a short introduction about Asphalion and Core IT and the webinar. We will start with a short introduction about the theory and the companies, and then we will go into the demo of the tool that we want to share with you. So just first of all, the speakers for today. Somebody is not muted. The speakers of today. My name is Remco Munich. I'm on the left side. I'm the Regulatory Information Director. I'm in direct contact with EMA for the topics of XE, VMPD, ISO, IDMP, ECTD. I have the pleasure here to do this webinar together with Gary Wilson from Core IT, which Gary will introduce himself in a minute. Just first about Asphalion. We are a scientific and regulatory service provider with offices in Barcelona, Madrid, and Munich, more than 75 people. We were founded in the year 2000, and we also help a lot of clients with finding proper IT tools to assist and make work easier. So Asphalion Services, we give support from regulatory and scientific strategy, medical writing, global submission, electronic submission, and regulatory information management, life cycle management, all variations, and pharmacovigilance. We do this for drugs, biologics, advanced therapy, medicinal products, and medical devices. Today, we focus on the electronic tree that you see, the e-submission, and how we can simplify your work. So for e-submission, we provide support for global ECTD publishing. We do XE VMPD maintenance for a large number of clients. We submit the data to EMA. We help companies with ISO IDMP, identifying what are the needs, what are the data requirements, and how can you have software installed, use in the most optimal way. For ISO IDMP, we give 5 different services. We help by creating awareness, by providing trainings. We help companies establishing company-specific objectives and project plans. We help companies by reviewing and propose new data processes and IT tools. We assist companies by selecting tools so we can extract data from documents and map to structured data. So today we are looking in how we can map your data to structured data. And we also provide continuous updates on the developments of IDMP. There have been some delays, but still it's important to get ready. So Gary, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Gary Wilson. I'm a delivery manager from Core IT, a software solution provider based out of Dublin in Ireland. I've worked for many years in the area of regulatory affairs and software solutions around that, particularly in the area of e-submissions and structured data on application forms, which is where I first met Remco, and we started to work on some projects together. Coming out of that is our SPORIFY solution to help you manage and maintain the control vocabularies hosted at the EMA for SPOR. So after Remco goes through a few more slides, I'll give you a live demonstration of the system and show you how we can help you to match, maintain, synchronize, and integrate SPOR data into your organizations with as least pain as possible.
Okay, thanks, Gary. So just a short introduction on what we want to achieve. I mean, everybody online knows that ISO IDMP is coming. It's in the law written that we need to comply with ISO IDMP. ISO, IDMP are the 5 different standards to uniquely identify a medicinal product. And it means that for industry, we're going from XEVMPD towards IDMP. And in order to get from XEVMPD to IDMP, it's also clear that we need some controlled vocabularies. And that's why we have a vehicle that's called SPOR that EMA has set up as a master data system to get from XEVMPD to IDMP and structured data. So what does SPOR means, just in case you don't know, it stands for Substances, Product, Organization, Referentials. The substances and products authorities are still working on this, but the organization is already live and the referentials also. So the organization is a list of all organizations that there are. So these are the marketing authorization holders, sponsors, regulatory authorities, manufacturers. Referentials, it's a list of all the controlled vocabularies, and there are over 100 referentials, over 100 controlled vocabularies. So these are the famous dosage forms, routes of administration, countries, languages, procedure types, any pick list that you see also in an e-application form, or that we use for XEVMPD or ISO IDMP is a referential. So what do we want to do with master data? No, it's like any non-transactional information considered to play a key role in the core operation of a business and reused for multiple purposes. So the idea is you have one organization in your, if you would have Asphalion in your database, you would have one entry with one unique code that you can reuse for different databases, different use. So that would be master data. So the key benefits of master data, it's easier for performing better analytics. You can just use the data as it is. It's more efficient for regulatory action and decision making. It has operational savings and efficiencies. It obviously leads to better quality data and across the value chain. And you can also align with the upcoming data standards. So it's easier to align, map, etc. What we see, example of master data, no, can you imagine you want to book a flight, you have after holidays, you want to restart booking a flight, you go to your mobile phone, you start searching places, but you better be careful that you don't end up in Barcelona, Venezuela, instead of Barcelona, Spain, where I'm located. So that's really the use of master data. Once you have master data, it can be maintained and reused against many reused across many processes, and it improves the quality of business applications and reduce time and leads to accurate data. What's also important is currently the lack of standardization within different departments or different companies. No, I mean, even if we take a simple example, a patient might say, I'm taking a capsule. And we might say, but it's not a capsule, it's a hard capsule. But actually the dictionary might say it's a capsule with a comma hard, and in production they just say we manufacture caps. So also within SPOR, that really allows us, there will be one term which is capsule comma hard with a unique ID, and then there are synonyms assigned to this. So even though different departments, different companies have different wording for a certain term, you would have uniquely identified it with a certain code, which allows better data quality. Why do we need standardization? I mean, it's not only for ISO IDMP, it's for the regulatory activities, but we also want to improve our e-prescription. There's something that's called serialization, that we want to track a medicine from manufacturing until dispensing to the patient. We have a topic of shortages, that we want to see which product is registered in which country. Of course, recalls, in case you want to recall a certain batch, you can trace it, inspections, and pharmacovigilance. So the more standardized data we have on the product level, the more easy these kind of activities come. What's also very important is that we need to have authoritative data. So once data is from a single source complete and accurate, then we have really authoritative data. So based on this information, we can make important decisions based on this authoritative data. And what is very important with regards to SPOR is that you might have your internal systems. For example, you might have a regulatory information management system or an SAP system that has a certain term, like film-coated tablet, 50 milligram, and a certain active substance. If you want to align this to EMA, you need to start mapping. No, so you need to translate your film-coated tablet from your manufacturing or from your RIM system to the term from EMA. So you can do this for the strengths, you can do this for the dosage form, you can do this for the active substance. And what is a challenge for the companies is really to track all relevant changes in SPOR. I mean, currently, also for manufacturers, for organizations, EMA is updating the data, changing the data, and on a daily basis we see changes. And for an industry, that's really challenging. No, if you want to clean your list, you would align your data. You also need to keep it up to date. So early this year, I met Gary in a conference. We know each other from a long time from other projects, but Gary came with his SPORIFY solution, and then we did demos, and I really thought, wow, this would be great for companies to map your data, keep the data maintained, and that's why we are setting up this webinar in order to share this idea with companies and see how we can support you with this daring task. Gary, if you want to do the next slides and explain, do the demo?
Yep, perfect. Thanks very much, Remco. Do you need to transfer presenter to me at the moment? I'm not getting a pop-up to present my screen.
Yes, 2 seconds. Make presenter. And there you go. Yes.
Perfect. So just to check with everyone, you can see my screen at the moment.
I see it. Yep. Perfect.
Thanks for the introduction, Remco, and the overview of the process so far with SPOR and where we're at with things in ISO IDMP implementations. And thanks to yourself and Asphilion for giving us the opportunity to present the solution to all the attendees today. So, as I mentioned earlier on, SPORIFY is our solution, and we've developed this in a response to a challenge that currently faces every organization like yourselves, looking to interface and consume the data from the EMA and the SPOR data management services. As Remco touched on there, the EMA are implementing their ISO IDMP standards for the identification of medicinal products in a phased program based on the 4 domains of master data: substances, products, organizations, and referentials, commonly known as SPOR. So our goal with SPORIFY is to provide you a simple single solution for mapping, maintaining, synchronizing your organization local data with this EMA SPOR data as you move towards your implementation of ISO IDMP. So as I mentioned, every organization, whether it's an industry stakeholder or a regulatory agency, they're faced with exactly the same challenge of how do we consume and interface with this control vocabulary data at SPOR. So the first step in this process for many people is to identify what data they would like to map, then begin that mapping process. And this leads very quickly into a data management process where people realize that they need to then maintain the data, apply governance to the data, have to figure out a way to integrate that data into their local systems, and then deal with the ongoing challenge and synchronization of the ever-updating control dictionaries at SPOR. So what we see on screen here at the moment is the SPORIFY homepage. And I have another tab open where I've just logged into the system as a brand new user today. So when I log in, we get presented what we call the SPORIFY dashboard. And as a brand new user, the left-hand side of this dashboard looks very plain and empty. But as we start interfacing with the system and we start adding data, information will start to build and it'll start to give us instant feedback of where we currently stand with our local systems against the SPOR systems. So the left-hand side here will build as we go, and the right-hand side gives us real-time information on the EMA SPOR systems as they stand today. So in the organization master system, we can see today that there are 10,500 organizations with 17,000 locations. In the referentials master system, we see it spread across 112 lists with 104,000 individual terms. Below, we give you a timeline of when the data is updated, so you can see that it's constantly updating. And we break that down by each of the master data domains. And below, we have links to each of the individual items that have been updated since we last synchronized with SPOR. So the way our system works is every day we check with SPOR and say what data is new. We then compare it back to the data you've loaded into the system and see if any of your information need to be updated. or is there anything you need to know about? Again, the activity here is broken down by each of the domains. And we also offer you a chance to record favorites here. This is especially popular for our clients in relation to organizations. So here you can select organizations and monitor any changes to your organization or your location. So without further ado, I'll move into the mapping process. As I'm going through the system, if you guys have any questions, feel free to type them into the questions box and we'll answer them at the end, and I can revisit sections and clarify things if needed. So I'll start with referentials, as it was the first master data domain released by the EMA. Once we click on the referentials menu on the left-hand side, we're presented with three options. An overview, which continues from our main dashboard and will start to provide further information, specifically related to referentials. I'll come back to this in a couple of minutes after we do some mapping and you'll see it starting to build. Source lists is where we update data from our local systems into SPORIFY to begin the matching process. And RMS lists is our interface onto the SPOR data. So like you would log on to the EMA SPOR interface today and search and look at things, you can do that straight inside the tool, and we'll provide you automatic links from your data to this SPOR data as you build it into the system. So to start showing you the power of the system, we'll move back to source lists. And this is the screen where you input your data into the system and the mapping begins. So to format your data for SPORIFY, we can provide you a very simple template. And when you download this template, it will open up an Excel for you. And all we require is the local database ID Remco mentioned earlier on, and that uniquely identifies every term inside your local systems today, whether it's an Excel sheet, whether it's a database. Each of your terms can be given a local ID to uniquely identify them. So that goes into the left column, and the term that you'd like to match goes into the right column. Once you format that data, it will look something like this. And this is a list that was provided to us by one of our clients, where we can see on the top they have a unit of measurement ID and the unit of measurement name. They're the two column names. Their ID is on the left with a comma to separate it, and the term on the right. So once their data is formatted like this, it's very quick and easy to upload it into SPORIFY and let the matching algorithms take place. So I'll go ahead and upload that list here for you now, and a couple of other lists, so you can see how quickly the system can start to map your data and provide you back some information. So to upload a list, we simply click the upload button and give our list a name. So this list is going to be units of measure. If we have multiple systems in our organization, we can create those system names to associate the list to those systems. For demonstration purposes today, I'll leave this on default. I then select the list I'd like to match against. So I'm going to say the units of measurement list from SPOR. We'll go away and we'll bring you back a list of every language available on that list on the control vocabulary, and you can select from it. My lists are in English for today. I then choose the file that I've already created, which is my units of measurement list that I just showed you. We had a header row there, so I can tell it to skip that because it's not information we wish to match. And once I click save, the information will start being uploaded into the system. We'll provide automatic matching where possible, and you'll see that there in green. In yellow, you'll see where we have like matches, so things that we can suggest to you. It's a very similar term, but may not be an exact match, and that's something that we'll give you a short list on, and you can make that decision. And in gray, you see things that are not set, or things that we just don't know about yet, but you can still action them and group them and categorize them inside SPORIFY. So let me upload a couple of more lists, and you'll start to see the graphs building. So I have a country list. Again, it's going to come from our default system inside our organization. I select the country list on SPOR, choose my file, skip the heading, and again, the matching takes place pretty instantaneously. And the last list I'll use for demo purposes is a pharmaceutical dose form list. So I'm just giving it a local name. Select the list from SPOR, click on my local file, skip the heading, and save. And as you can see, that pharmaceutical dose form list would have looked like this before it came up to the system. And straight away, SPORIFY provides the matching. So what we have now is information that we didn't have before. We can now see that overall, 68% of the items inside our local systems are compliant with SPOR. 18% are almost there, and 14% we're not sure about. So to jump into these lists and to start to perform some manual tasks with them or manual matching, you simply click on the list name. We're going to provide you back here the status that we've applied in the system for you. So if we've matched it, you'll see it with a green tick. If we've got a suggestion, we'll give you a little light bulb so there's an idea there for you. And if we're not sure, you'll get a gray cogwheel. But all the time, as I mentioned, you can provide your own categories and your own groupings to this information. And we call them resolution statuses inside the system. So every time you move down through a row, you can either map it or you can provide a category or a grouping to it. So when you get to the end of your list, you know that you've actioned everything and you can make business decisions around what you need to do with some of the information. So to put that into some context, we can see here that our data on the left is now mapped to the SPOR data on the right. We can click on this item and it'll bring us straight through to the SPOR RMS interface to look at the term in more detail. And if I go back, we can show you how you can perform some of these manual matchings. So for this term here, antigen unit, if I want to match that to SPOR or see what the suggestion is, I simply click on the column on the right-hand side, click it again, and it'll open up a short list of suggestions. These are the closest items available that we've determined. Otherwise, you can look at all the information on SPOR. So we can see here, antigen unit in SPOR today is antigen units. So once I select it and move to the next cell, the system will save the item, and basically I've matched that record. I can filter my list based on each of the resolution statuses that we have. So if I want to maybe move quickly through a list, I can just look at the suggested items and then start moving through them. So sales milliliter here, move to the next one. The items will start to match behind us and we can move through the list. So it's much easier than trying to manage this in Excel yourselves across multiple screens and maybe multiple people trying to work on it together. So if we get to a situation like this one, where we have an item on the left that we don't have a suggestion for on the right, or it doesn't appear to be available in SPOR, we can set what we call a resolution status against that. And to do so, we simply click over here, and here's some I've already created in the system. So maybe we need to raise a change request with SPOR to get this added. Maybe it's a legacy term we have inside our organization, or maybe it's a term we just need to review and see, do we actually need to keep this and maintain it going forward? If we want to set up more statuses here, we can do it quite easily by jumping into the administration section, clicking on resolution status, create new status. I'm going to call this status demo, so we can see it on the list quite clearly. I'm going to give it a color of blue, and I'm going to give it a symbol. And once I click save, it gets added to our list, and I can then go back and assign that to anything on my lists. And again, it will build into our overall graphs and our summaries, so we can then make decisions on that data later on. So if I go back to the suggested items, I can see this one. I'm going to say, I want to apply this one to it. So straight away it starts to build, it disappears from our list because it's not a suggested item anymore. And when we go back to our overview, we start to see that the dashboard is now getting populated. And we can start to see how many terms are in each of these statuses. Again, giving you that information around how we're going to govern this data going forward and how are we going to maintain it. So that in essence is how you upload information into the system and how you match it. The next thing we'd be asking is how are we going to integrate this with our local data or our local systems. To do that, we provide two different options out of the box today. We have an export option on screen, which will export your list into an Excel sheet. That Excel sheet will contain the information that you provided to us originally, and also the information from SPOR, where you've matched it and where you haven't matched it. So I'm just waiting on Excel to open here, and then I'll pop this open for you. So On the left-hand side, you can see this is the name we've given the list in the system, the source ID from our local system, our source term, the status we've applied, and then all the SPOR information. As we move down through the sheet, you'll see that the data on the left doesn't have anything on the right, and that's data that's left inside your systems that you don't have a SPOR match to. And as you keep moving on, you'll see that there's data in SPOR that you haven't got a left-hand side match to in your own systems. So we need to make decisions about how do we merge these lists together and maintain a single source of truth for your organization. And SPORIFY lets you do that via the resolution statuses. So you can always maintain all records in your system where required, and then you can integrate them back either via writing queries against the Excel sheet or via our application programming interface, or known as an API, where computers can talk to each other and extract the information directly. So that's in essence how our referential mapping works. As you can see, it's quite quick and simple once you get the data into the system to perform that matching and to add those categorizations. So moving on from there, if I take a look at organizations, things will start to seem a little more familiar to you now that we've looked at referentials. And we have an overview, which will start to build as we enter data into the system. Our source lists is where we'll upload our organization information. And our OMS organizations list here is our interface on SPOR. So in here, you can search for any organization. If I just pick somebody at random, we can show you the organization detail that's available on SPOR, the associated location detail. And if there are multiple locations, you can easily select them from the interface here and also translate them into any language that's currently available on SPOR. So let's start some mapping for organizations. And we can talk about the differences. So organizations present a slightly separate challenge to referentials in that there's multiple layers of mapping required to map an organization. The way organizations are laid out in SPOR is there are two separate records. There's an organization record, and then there's a location record. So you can think of the organization record as being your organization name, and the location record as being your organization address. A single organization can have multiple addresses. So how we get around that challenge in SPORIFY and try to make it simple for you is to combine them. So we give you a template very like the RMS template, but we just require an extra piece of information. So we still need your local source ID. We need the organization name that you wish to match, and we need the organization address. Now, everybody seems to format addresses slightly differently across Europe. So you can give us this address in one column or 20 columns, it doesn't matter. SPORIFY will concatenate your address together or combine each of those columns together and perform matching on it. So for my organization list, it looks like this. I've got a header on top telling me I've got an internal number or my internal ID, the company name, and then it's broken into things like house number, street, city, country, postcode, and then the country translation at the end. So each of these items on the list here, we will upload into SPORIFY, and it will start trying to map at both the organization and the location level simultaneously. So to upload it, it's a similar process to referentials. So I'm just going to call it org test for today. I'm going to select that default system again, and I'm going to pick my formatted file from my local computer. I'm going to skip that heading row and click save. So straight away, we start analyzing that data at the organization level and at the location level. Where we can, the system will match both the organization and the location level, and we can see 48% of our list we've been successful with. An extra 14% we've matched at the organization level. We have some multiple choices in there, whereby there may be multiple organizations with the same name on SPOR that we've detected matches for, and they may be spread across different locations. So you may have company A in France and company A in Germany. So we have multiple choices. You need to pick which one is the one you're looking for. And then we've got some suggestions where maybe we have some typos, or maybe we have some abbreviations, limited and LTD and things like that you can pick from. And inside our matching settings, we have configurations in there to let you automatically match things like that. For today's demonstration, I'll show you how the suggestions work. 3% of the list is not set as yet, and we can still apply resolution statuses to those items as we find them. So this list was provided to me by one of our NCA clients, so it's quite a diverse list of organizations. For each of you guys, you'll probably have a smaller list of organizations, just your own and maybe your subsidiaries, but here we have organizations spread across the spectrum. So as I look inside, I can see the source name that was provided to us, the name we matched on SPOR, the address that was provided to us, and the address we matched on SPOR. As we look down the symbols here on the resolution statuses, I can see that we have an organization symbol here telling me that we've just matched at the organization level. What I can do, however, is I can take a look at the location side and see, can I make a match to this? So the system didn't match this automatically, but maybe there's a match there. So if I take a look, I can see that there's 2 locations available for this organization, and it has an extra piece of information in here. It's telling us it's in Bavaria, which isn't in our source. So by selecting that, I can move on, and we've matched that organization now fully to the location level. Again, with this one, I can do the same thing. Okay, so I have Fresni here in Italian and Florence in English on SPOR, but for us as a human looking at this, we can make that match. Here's an interesting one where we have a suggestion for AB Science SA, and we can see that our source is in France. So if I click on the organization side, I should get my suggestions back. I've AB Science in France. So if I select that, I can take a look, and there's our location. So for a person looking through this, it's very quick for us to start matching all of our organizations and locations inside the system as we go. Here's a common thing we see, in that addresses are formatted very differently. So for ABV here, we see we have this location where the location is completely scrambled in SPOR compared to what the source is. But for us looking at it again, we can make that correlation and see that 61 is probably the same address and make that match. Once we export this information, again, it's exactly the same premise as we have with referentials, in that we'll provide you back the information that you've given to us originally to help you integrate it locally. And we'll also give you back the SPOR information. We go a little bit further with organizations, and I'll show you once the Excel opens here. So here's the information you've given us, your source ID, your source name, and your combined address. Again, you've got the statuses you have in the system. And now we provide you back both levels of OMS. So we have the organization ID, the organization information, and the modified date of that organization. And then we have the associated location ID, and then the address information in the same format that OMS would expect it. So you can then start to format the data inside your own systems in the way that's expected by the EMA. All of this information is also available via the API that I mentioned earlier for computer-to-computer communication. So you can automatically integrate this and synchronize it with your local systems. Looking back at an overview now that we've started, we can start to see around the world where the organizations are that we've matched. We start to see our statuses here building, and again, counts here to see how well we're doing against OMS. At the bottom, we give you the same timeline again in a little more detail on OMS, telling you when each organization and locations were updated in the system. So as you can see, there is a huge requirement here to keep in sync with OMS because it's updating all of the time, and the same with RMS. Taking a look now quickly at our interface on organizations for SPOR. It's here where you can provide that favorite tag to an organization that you wish to follow, or an organization that you wish to keep a close eye on. And to do that, it's quite simple. You simply just click the star on the left hand side, and we'll select the organization ID and any associated location ID on SPOR. And this will build back to the favorites tab that I showed you earlier on the homepage dashboard, where you can click in. Oh, sorry, page is still loading. Where you can click in and now see when each of the items associated with that organization were last updated. and provide quick links to jump straight back into that SPOR information, and you can look at it in more detail. So we've really tried to tackle the full challenge here of mapping, maintaining, synchronizing, and governing your data. So the power of the resolution statuses mean that you can apply your own workflow and your own processes in your organization to the matching process. So you may add a status there to say this item's for review, this item's approved, and you can implement a 4 eyes process to make sure that the data and the source of truth that you're creating in the system is approved by you before it gets consumed into your systems. We have an administration section here where you can set up roles for users in the system. We've audit logging, so you can see all of the activity in the system. And then we have those settings I mentioned earlier where you can set up the time zone so your audit logs are correct for yourselves. The match settings where you can tell it to ignore punctuation, automatically match source data every time we do a sync. So it may be a case that you upload 100 terms today and some of them just don't exist on SPOR, but as SPOR is updated tomorrow, they become available. The system will automatically match them and notify you up on top here telling you something's been matched on your behalf. We also have the power for system-to-system matching, meaning if you have multiple systems created, maybe you've got a RIM system, maybe you've got a publishing system that have the same lists. So let's say you've got a units of measure list in your RIM system and a units of measure list in your publishing system. Once both of them are mapped to the same target in SPOR, if you have these preferences enabled, we can use the manual matches you've applied in one system to help match the next system. So you only have to go through this manual matching pane once, and the next time you upload a system that for units of measure, we'll say, let's match everything on SPOR that we can, and let's match everything from our other internal systems that we can. So it really cuts down on your time and effort making these manual matches to SPOR. And on top of that, the system is going to keep it in sync going forward, so you don't have to come back and revisit anything you've previously mapped. We have an EMA settings section where you can input your EMA API credentials, so we can do the synchronization and updates on your behalf. You have user management, where you can have some preferences around your security settings and around your password policies and things like that that would meet your own internal IT policies. So the system is completely flexible, it's cloud-based, and you can basically tailor it to your own needs around your own IT governance and security policies. And we have some user guides. We have an inbuilt support ticketing system if you need help. And we just have the usual terms and conditions and privacy policies at the bottom. So I mentioned briefly notifications. Our notification system sits on top here. And if you click inside, you can see everything that's been updated on SPOR since the last time you logged in. And if I go back into my history of my notifications, you can start to see here that things were being matched on my behalf in the background with no effort on my behalf as the system syncs with SPOR. So I can see 2 organizations were matched, it done a sync that time. 8 were matched on a different day. So this account has been active for a while. I cleared it down before today, so I can start to see how the history is building up and how the system is actually working on my behalf in the background. So going back to our main dashboard again, we have some reports here that are interesting for your management that you can see. Well, for RMS, for every list we've updated, we're 68% of the way there. We have a little bit to do. We have 14% where we have some work to do. And then maybe we've got some change requests and other items in here that we need to action ourselves. So that kind of wraps up my live demonstration of the system. And we're happy to take questions and look in detail at some more aspects of the solution if you have any particular questions. So Remco, I can pass back to you for the question section, if that's okay.
Gary, you had 2 more slides, no?
Oh, I can jump into the slides as well. Yeah, sorry, I thought you wanted to do questions before the slides. Okay, no problem. Yeah, just give me a second.
Just for the attendees, till now we don't have any questions. So if you can write your questions inside, there's a question section where you can enter your questions in case you have any. Okay.
Yeah, so you should be able to see my slide screen now. This slide, generally we get questions around how do we implement this in our system. Our data is siloed across Excel sheets and databases and multiple systems. How do we actually integrate this, and how do we make sure that this becomes our single source of truth for our organization. And there are different styles of how you can integrate master data in any organization. So I prepared a slide really in answer to that question. The way that SPOR actually works, it's a registry system. And what a registry system means is that the data hub is in the middle and all of the other systems look into that hub. So each system maintains its own copy of data, and basically you look up the hub to see what is the single source of truth today, and then you add it into each of your own systems, which is exactly how SPOR would work today. Another option you would have is to have a repository system. The repository system means that you would move the master data out of each of your local systems and add links and maintain all of your master data in a single hub. What that would mean is that you have one place to go to edit your data, and then it will feed back out into each of your systems. So in an ideal world, that's where we'd all like to get to, have one place to go to make a change, and all of our RIM system would update, our publishing system would update, our manufacturing systems would update. But in a lot of organizations, it's actually somewhere in the middle is where we are today. So we need a hybrid approach. So we may have some older systems that we need to upgrade in the next few years that may not be compatible with machine-to-machine APIs, but maybe the next releases of those systems would be. So though they would work like a registry today, they'd have to look up the item. But for newer systems that can have these API interactions, we can pump the data out from SPORIFY into those systems to keep them up to date. So your hub in the middle would be where you would maintain your single source of truth, and either you'd look that up or you'd push it out into each of your systems. So it really cuts down on the manual effort, and it cuts down on things like user errors or input errors, and it can improve like speed to market for products and everything else, because obviously your data is instantaneously getting pushed around your organization. So SPORIFY can support each of these three models. It can work like a registry for you if you don't have systems that can directly interact with it. It can work like that repository if you do have systems that can interact with it. And we can do a mix of both as a hybrid depending on what your systems are. And we're very happy to discuss each of your individual cases with you on a separate call if you're interested. And we can talk to you about how we can integrate this whole process into your own organization. The last slide is really a takeaway from you for today, really. And it's just again to remind you of the process cycle. And no matter what system you implement for master data management or control vocabularies, these same principles will apply. The first step for everybody is to identify the information that you wish to match. The second step is to start matching it. Third step is to maintain that data or apply those groupings or resolution statuses like we've shown you today. The fourth step is to have some governance around that. Make sure that you're happy that the data is actually correct. Do you need to maybe get some data updated with SPOR or the EMA? Or are you happy that the single source of truth is accurate for your organization? The fifth step there is to actually integrate it into your systems. There's no point in having these lists if you're not using them. So integration is a key step. And last but not least is synchronization, where when the control vocabularies update, you need to start this process again. SPORIFY can take a lot of the pain away for you, because once you have the data into the system, the synchronization happens automatically. We've already identified the information that you've fed into us. So this loop just keeps continuing in an infinite cycle for any data you've input into our system. So our notification systems keep you personally in the loop, so you know what's going on. You know if there's new things that you need to become aware of, and SPORIFY will take care of the rest for you in relation to any data you have loaded into the system. So we can see a couple of questions coming in now, Remco. So if you want to go ahead with the questions, we can try to help some people out.
Yeah, perfect. So thanks a lot for the demo and for raising the questions. I mean, just also to add to what Gary said, I mean, when as some of you know, I'm both part of the EMA ISO IDMP implementation group, so the industry implementation group, and I'm also part of the organization group, the subgroup. With the organization group, EMA is trying to set up the list of organizations. This is not only the marketing authorization holders, but also the all the manufacturers. Also from a regulatory perspective, we are looking in how we can optimize variations by using SPOR. So in future, if we have a change in an organization name, that we could just report this through the O data instead of doing a variation type 1A with all the ECD sequences, etc. So we are really looking how we can optimize it. When I looked at the O data before talking to Gary, I was really wondering like, oh, how will I work with this in future? I mean, I was coming from a company that had more than 50,000 registrations in Europe. Many manufacturers, many different marketing organization holders. How do you control your organizations that not somebody else is changing it? Because even today, I enter, I can make a change request to change the core IT address that they're no longer in Ireland, but they are in Spain. I would not do this, of course, but theoretically, this can happen any moment. We see changes in O that you don't have fully control over, and this tool, SPORIFY, really allows you. So I think that's why it helps you mapping, it helps you aligning, and also to maintain your data up to date. So coming with that introduction, there was a question. Somebody working for regulatory in a fairly small company that they currently have a RIM solution for XEVMPD, and that internally there's no need to further synchronize with SPOR. And the question is, what other systems should I be checking? I think it's a very relevant question. No, for big pharma, SPORIFY, it's a immediate use. I mean, we have implemented it in the biggest pharma company in the world. SPORIFY, if you have a lot of data, no, the business case is quickly there. If you are a smaller company with only few organizations, with one-time referential clearing, the business case might be a little bit more difficult to immediately identify, but just think about your organizations, your manufacturers, if changes occur. No, so what Gary also showed you with the favorite savings. So SPORIFY can really help you there. Another thing that we are trying to do is also in looking other tools, like data extraction from documents, data mapping by SPORIFY, and then how we can submit the data. And SPORIFY currently does ONR mapping. There are future enhancements in place, but also once S and P will come, substance and products, the tool will deliver more. Gary, do you have any addition to that?
Yeah, as you mentioned, we've implemented SPORIFY in a number of clients already, both pharmaceutical industry stakeholders and medicines regulators, and both of them have similar requests back to us, but different requests at the same time, I suppose. But one of the main things everybody's interested in now is substances. We know substances is coming, but it's not there yet from the EMA. So what we have on our roadmap before the end of the year is to take a look at the XEVMPD substance list and set that as a target in SPORIFY, where people can start to prepare their data and map to that list in the system. And we can keep that list updated with any new releases from the EMA. And then when substances master system comes along, it'll be a lot of a smoother transition then across for people who've already made these preparations. And then with P in the future, the target operating model of P is still being discussed. But as Remco said, things like data extractions, helping around variations and things like that, there's definitely benefits from SPORIFY in the future there, depending on what way the P model is implemented by the EMA, and we have different options, I suppose, and they'll come clearer for us in time. But we definitely will have an interface and solution for both S and P when they come on track.
Okay, great. Another question. How do you manage a situation like we have today? A lot of unclear changes in OMS, including changes of organization IDs, which were mapped to other companies before. And then maybe you can, Gary, show that inside the tool, how you can trace that.
Yeah, so let me pop back onto my screen here and I'll show you how we do that in SPORIFY.
Just to describe the challenge, I mean, today I can go into OMS, I can do a change request at EMA to change, for example, 1A Pharma, I can change the address. If I just have the document, the proof of establishment, which I could change. No, I mean, I could do a change request to request that it's no longer in Germany, but in Austria. And this would be approved by the EMA data steward. So how can SPORIFY help this?
Yeah, so at the moment, the way the data is set up across OMS, as we mentioned earlier, is there's two different tables effectively. We have an organization level where they have their own individual IDs, and then we have a location level that have their own set of individual IDs. The theory with OMS would be that the organization IDs wouldn't change, but at the moment OMS is very much a work in progress, and there are still organizations being added constantly to the system. MAHs are what's available today. Manufacturing sites will come on in the future, and other categories as well. But what happens today, if there's a change, once you're mapped to a particular organization, if that organization ID changes, obviously the mapping record in SPORIFY would reflect that, and we'd notify you to tell you that either the organization ID has been removed or your mapping has changed. So we'll notify you of things like that. We won't make any decisions or do any mappings like that on your behalf. Once you have the original mapping done, the synchronization piece will then alert you if there's any changes to those records. And especially, as Remco mentioned, this is the power of our follow our favorites option. So if I am to follow a 1A format, as it's the example you used, I can select the star, and any changes to this organization, I'll get special alerts about. So for people like yourself that are worried about your organization changing or your organization ID changing, you simply click that star and we'll tell you as soon as something like that happens.
Gary, just to add to that, you will inform it as soon as it happens. It's an email notification, or is it the next time that you log into the system?
Yeah, so basically the way it happens is the system synchronizes twice a day at the moment. So when we detect a change with that, the notification will be raised. So when you log into the system, you'll see that notification has been raised at the time that the synchronization happened. So if I jump back in and have a quick look at the notifications that are here, I may not have that exact example, but we can see here that two organizations were matched on sync. If there was a case that the organization was removed or something changed, you would get a synchronization notification to tell you something happened to that organization at the time it was in the last sync, and it would actually have the star icon here to tell you that something happened to your favorite organization on the last sync, and you'll get that in the notification section as soon as you log in.
Okay, excellent. I don't see any further question. Maybe we give one more minute if somebody has a question. Yeah, Gary, go ahead.
No, it's difficult for people sometimes to see exactly how these solutions fit into their current working models and their current processes at their organizations. So as you go away from today, if things that you've seen today are of interest to you, please let us know. We have an email address, info@sporify.eu, and you can get in touch with us, or you can get in touch with Asphilion, and we'll be able to set up basically a one-on-one situation or meeting with you to discuss your own situation and see how we can best help you. So don't go away from today thinking that you have a question that you can't answer. Maybe if you think of something later, please come back to us and we'll get back to you with any further information you require.
Yep. I mean, we normally also do demos individually with individual clients. So if you have a specific question, feel free to contact us, and also how we can support you. ISO IDMP is a huge topic. It's a scary topic, but if you approach it step by step, I think it's something that you should be able to manage. Just for your information, we're 23 till 25 of October. Gary and I will also be in Berlin, where we will be at a conference about global submission, including electronic submissions. If you're interested in, we will distribute the webinar, and we will also send you some information about that conference, and with a discount code, as we are sponsoring the event. So thanks a lot, everybody, for attending. And if you have any question, feel free to follow up with us, and we will be happy to assist you further.
Yeah, and the presentation will be available online for if you need to show it to any of your colleagues or whatever, and we'll distribute a link to that presentation later on as well.
Yes. Okay, thanks, Gary. Thanks all.
Thanks, bye.
Bye-bye.